Our next speaker is Philippe de Lacaze. He is the general manager of Couton Aquarium and Alter Ego Company, and I think it's nobody in the auditorium who don't know this successful company. Philippe has been involved in the world of aquariums for almost 20 years and participated to more than 40 major aquarium realizations worldwide. He is going to introduce today a newly opened aquarium in Mallorca. Please, Philippe.
Inga. So, dear colleagues, I'm very pleased to have the chance to introduce to you the newly opened aquarium in Ses Salines, and I have to admit that I am very pleased to do so here today, as we have been involved in the building steps of this aquarium like 10 years ago. Before entering into the introduction of the aquarium of Balearic Islands, let me say that this building has been done in the framework of a very active Spanish aquarium market. For those of you that do not know very well this market in Spain, let's say that since 1995, means 14 years ago, we opened like 12 aquariums in 14 years, means almost one aquarium in Spain. The aquarium of Gijón opened in 2006. The aquarium of Zaragoza opened for the International Expo of 2008. The aquarium of Madrid in the zoo opened in 1995. The Oceanográfico here opened, as Pablo said this morning, in 2003. And a park near Madrid in Faunia opened also in 2002. Let me tell you also about the aquarium of San Sebastian, which is one of the oldest one in Spain. It opened 100 years ago, and it will be inaugurated for his new expansion in a couple of days by the King of Spain. So it is a great reference for the aquarium of San Sebastian. Also the aquarium of Lanzarote, which opened in 2006, and of course the aquarium of Barcelona that you all know, which opened in 1995, and other 4 aquariums as well as the Sea Life in south of Spain, Benalmádena, an aquarium in Roquetas, which is near here, and also the aquarium in the western zone of Spain. So that makes almost 14 aquariums in 12 years. So let's come now to the location of the aquarium of Balearic Islands, which is in the island of Palma de Mallorca, which is very near this place, and exactly at 45 kilometers from the capital city of the island, and it is right in the south of the island because it does introduce the beauties of the Cabrera Island, which is one of the natural reserve park of Spain. Here you can see a picture of the island, which is a real piece of paradise, as you can see. The island is forbidden to the tourist, as it is a natural reserve, as I told you, called Parque Nacional, under the management of the Spanish Ministry of Environment, and since 1 year under the management of the Balearic Island. This is why the center is not in the island of Cabrera itself, but it's in the island of Mallorca, because it's not open to the tourism. Let's give you some important figures of the aquarium itself. It did open 1 year ago. The final client, as I told you, was the Spanish ministry. The architect was a Spanish one. The total area is almost 4,500 square meters. The water volume is 800,000 liters of water, which are divided into 20 tanks of local species. And our scope of action was the design and build of the aquariological and scenographical effects. The objective of the Interpretation Center is to show all the aspects of the natural reserve of the island of Cabrera. Submerged by biotopes, as you can see in the down part of the slide, at the right-hand side of the picture, which is the aquarium itself. also the terrestrial landscapes, which is on the top of the cone, and also the discovery of the role of the Mediterranean Sea through the centuries, both in culture, in history, and trade. The aquarium, as I told you, is below the Earth level, and then the terrestrial side and the cultural side of the site is in the cone itself. And as you can see, two lifts are doing the link between the submerged zone and the emerged zone itself. Here you can see the materials of the cone, which reflect the historical building habits of the island, which is dry stones. The visitor follow a circular route along the cone, as I showed you, offering on top a superb view to the sea and the island of Cabrera. The sea is very near from the center because it is like 200 meters from the center itself, so it's very near. And in the cone, they can discover a giant fresco showing the history of the Mediterranean Sea from the world creation to the present days. It's a superb architectural work to my point of view. Here you can see an example of this cone and the fresco, as I told you about. And here you can see the creation of the world and the God's creatives below, for those of you which can have the imagination to see it. The link between the museum and the aquarium is a giant water pool at the level of the entrance, which simulates, of course, the sea. The two lifts I talked about are starting from inside the aquarium, inside a specific tank, and then go up, crossing the aquarium itself, and then the water pool that you can see here, and lifting the visitors to the top of the cone. The entrance of the aquarium is done below this pool, and as you can see at the end of the picture, on the left part of the picture, people enter through 3 panels of acrylic below the seawater, so they have the effect of being really submerged and diving, and there we hide a wave operational effect, which does really get the impression of being immersed under a wave. We have been involved both in the design and the execution of the aquariological and interior decor, but after that the building was fully designed, unfortunately. So we had to swim against the stream in order to transform an already designed building in an aquarium. Therefore, our main objectives were to make, I would say, to get rid of all the structural limitation of the building, also to convert the visit in a diving experience, which was a real challenge to us, and then most common objectives to integrate AV in the interior decor, as well as smooth discovery step by step, and at the end of the story to adapt to all kinds of visitors. Let's go through the structural challenge that we have to face. The first nightmare was this one, the structural challenge. As you can see, the designed aquarium was very, very poor to our point of view, showing only 10 tanks surrounded by a forest of structural pillars and in a very straightforward layout. Our objective was to increase the visiting route, to increase the number of tanks, and to increase the time of the visit, without changing the location of the main tanks, which were unfortunately fixed. So that's the final layout, and the layout which is less straight, and it is more curved in order to increase, at the end of the story, to increase, of course, the tanks. As you can see, we doubled the tanks, going from 10 to 20. We doubled the visiting route, and we think that we doubled as well the estimated visiting time. The second objective, as I told you, was to convert the visit in a diving experience. That was the real challenge that we had to face. Inside the aquarium, there is no any link with the emerged environment. There is no any panel, no any informative panels, and no any human action. You are 100% below water, doesn't matter if it is a wet or if it is a dry exhibit. That's why we wanted to propose a very progressive diving from a typical local harbor at the level of the surface to the very depth, and then coming back, swimming back again, diving upwards to the surface again. So the first item was the submarine grotto. The second item is diving in the harbor of Mallorca harbor. The third step was the open sea. The fourth step is the level of the continental platform at the levels -60, -50, -30 meters. And then we are diving upwards to know the rocky and sand bottoms, and then at the end we are back to the surface at a level -5 or -2 meters below the surface. So let's now, introduce each step very briefly. The entrance of the aquarium. As you may remember, we enter below the big seawater pool that it is over all this aquarium. So we have the feeling to be really immersed because we are under 3 acrylic flat windows, and we have there the waving operational effect, which does give you the fact, the impression that you are really diving in the sea. The floor is rocky, it's clear. The sound effect is, first of all, waves that you can see, and then once you enter into the grotto, it's like noises of plick-plock and some birds, etc. The light is very sunny at the beginning, and afterwards it's dark. The walls are calcarean rocks with lichen colonies, and the ceiling is a rocky grotto. Here's the first idea that we tried to do, and at the end of the story, sorry for the picture because we didn't have any water on the pool, which is on top of your head once we take the picture, but that's the atmosphere that we get. That's a second atmosphere that we get in the entrance. Of course, the grotto had to hide some technical stuff, and we try to hide them as much as we can. And that's a detail of the rock work which is done over there. Then we enter into the grotto, itself, and inside the grotto, it's the information and the ticketing counter, which is the last connection with the exterior world. Once you cross that, you don't have any connection, and you're really diving, as I told you. So the second step of the visit is the Balearic Harbor. The immersion really begins there. The visitor crosses a light shower, so he really gets wet because of a fog effect, so he really knows from that point that he's diving. We are now below the seawater at a level of, let's say, -2 meters to -5 meters. So the floor is sandy in this case, it's clear, the sound effect, it's kid, which are making some noises in the harbor, boats there, human persons which are there, as well, so you can hear the noises of a harbor and the life of a harbor. The light, you can see sun rays broken by water surface, and the walls are big blocks of harbor, and the sailing is what we call a water sailing. In all the aquarium has an artificial water ceiling which does evolve according to the depth of the visit. Shapes and colors of this ceiling are done by computer, so in all the zones. So here's the first atmosphere that we wanted to render, and then some pictures of this zone where you can see the ceiling, which is very clear because we are near the surface with the ambience or the atmospheres of waves. And here you can discover the big tank, which is at the right-hand side, and the big blocks I talked about. Here you can see another picture of the tank itself. And here, one of the last pictures where you can see the 2 lifts which are included in the tank and which we are going to take in order to cross and to come back to the terrestrial zone. Third zone is diving in the depths, which is a 3D movie. The 3D movie room proposes an artificial diving from the harbor to the very depth, like -2,500 meters, and back to the continental platform at a level of -60 meters approx. Therefore, the effects when entering in the room have to be coherent with the previous stage, which was the harbor, and at the end of the movie, coherent with the darkness of the continental platform, which is going to be the further step of the visit. Again, and of course, all these effects are done by computer. The 3D movie has a 4-minute length and is going to be shot in a screen of 8 meters by 3 meters. It has been 100% realized by computer, as I told you, through our branch Couton AVS Audiovisuals. At the end of this paper, you will have the chance to see the movie, which is in 3D, but in this case it will be done in 2Ds because of the equipment here. Of course, we have also LCD screens in the gallery, which are tried to be hidden as much as we can. And we have, of course, interactive screens, like here, which are done both in Spanish, in Catalan, in British, and in French. Let's go to the fourth step of the visit. After the movie ends, we are in the level of the continental platform, as I told you, which is minus 60 meters. And here we are really in the atmosphere of the big blue. So the floor is sandy but dark. The ceiling is very dark as well, very blue sky dark. And on the right-hand side, we have an acrylic, which some lights effects there, and also a movie showing some mammals and fishes, which are very far away, just in order to give the impression of depth and of largeness of the view. Towards the surface, we are diving each time more to the surface, and here we are in the minus 50 to minus 40 from the surface. So smoothly, the biotopes begin to change, and after the big blue, we begin to see some rock works, which are, as you can see there, with a biologization of the substrate, which is rather like than 20%. Here you can see a red coral grotto, and you can see that the floor is sandy, quite more clear than it was in the previous stage, and with some formations of waves showing the erosion done by the streams. Then we continue going upwards towards the surface. Here we are at minus 30 meters to minus 15 meters. So the visitor discovers here a cylindrical jellyfish in a grotto, which is here at the right-hand side of the picture, which is real like a sun ray which appears there and, let's say, illuminate the grotto and the jellyfish by itself. As you can see, the sky roof is done here much more clear with an atmosphere of waves, so with white zones in this artificial water ceiling, and the treatment of the floor is each time more clear, as you can see. We're going to discover as well a ruin of a boat, which is the Cabrera 3, which was sunk during the Punic Wars like thousands of years ago. And so here you can see that we don't want to make any separation between the wet exhibits and the dry exhibits. So the ruin itself, it's part in the wet exhibit and part in the dry exhibits. It's always our point of view to say that we don't want to do a separation between the aquariums and the visiting route. We have to submerge the visitor in a complete new experience. That's why here the artificial ceiling is much more movie, and the floor as well. Here you can see another example of the same zone. And here you can see some examples also of archaeological effects that we have done at the right-hand side on the dry exhibit, and the same effect that we do inside the tank, showing that we use the amphors in order the morenas to hide themselves. So now sounds that we're coming back to the surface. We are here at minus 10 meters approx, and minus 10 meters to minus 5 meters, let's say. And so the floor here, it's much more clear. Posidonias here and there. The sound effects come back to waves, to boats, to human noises, to kids, etc. The walls are much more intense in biologization, and the ceiling, as you will see in this picture, is much more clear with these wave effects. Here we are below a boat, just to show that we are coming back to the surface. That's another picture where you can discover the LCD screens, which are hidden in the rocks, as well as a touch pool, which is far away on the left of the picture. And here also the work in the floor, which is much more wavy because of the streams, of course. The last view that the people are going to see is the lift and the main tank that they are going to, well, that's an atmosphere that we wanted to render, and that's the last view because that's the elevators that they are going to take in order to lift themselves up to the terrestrial cone which I introduced at the beginning of the paper. So now I would like to show you the movie by itself. It's a very quick one. Okay, the music does not work. Oh, yes. Well, so that's the end. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will have the chance to visit this aquarium, which is, to my point of view, very, very nice. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Inga.
Thank you, Philip, for the presentation. It was very interesting. Are there any questions? No? Thank you very much.